Okay, I'd like to call the November 4th Westfield Board of Education special meeting to order. It is 6:41. Sorry for the delay, we had a special meeting prior. If you'd like to make public comment, please fill out a card right now, so we'll go right into them. Our district mission is to support each student's needs by providing the opportunities, experiences, and educational tools for their journey. Our belief statements are: we believe all students can and will learn. We believe education is a shared responsibility between students, staff, and families. We believe that equitable education is essential. We believe diversity enriches the community and education. We believe positive community experiences and relationships are the key to student success. And we believe everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and respected for who they are. As a board, we adhere to our norms, which includes our social contract, which is 1, listen to understand; 2, be respectful; 3, model our district 4 Cs; 4, practice confidentiality; 5, focus on the whole district; 6, no surprises; and 7, we govern, not manage, we steer, not row. And number 2 is our public comments. And our first public comment this evening is Amber Baker. No, whatever you want to do.
So, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the school board calendar is no longer on, like, anything anymore. So when you go to, like, the calendar of upcoming events, it just says no upcoming events are listed, like, even right now, even though this meeting's happening. And then if you go to, like, the calendar for the district, the school board calendar is not on there either. So, just as a heads up, it fell off yesterday.
I looked at the ones that Monte today and it was on the
The
bottom.
meetings are on there, there's just not a separate one because everything was doubled and tripled.
Okay.
So Rebecca put just one school calendar.
Is it on the district?
Yes.
It's on the district.
It's on the
So you have to
district
click district calendar.
I am on the district calendar and it's not there.
On the
I'll
front
look
page,
at it
it's-
after.
District calendar, it's not there.
I'll look at it after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Real quick, sorry, Kristen Thompson does this. I see that we have a budget discussion. There is no budget document on the board docs, and so I'm asking for the commitment to have the documents uploaded tonight or first thing tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Number 3 on our agenda is our curriculum council proposal review. Mr. Scott Long, Assistant Superintendent for Learning Services, will address the board. Are you getting your teachers coming?
I have special guests, yeah, I'll,
Okay.
you can come on up too, Nick and Megan, come on up. I'll get us started and I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for inviting us. Good evening, thanks for having us here today. I'm really excited to be joined with Nick Hissey and Megan Hertzai, 2 phenomenal teachers at West Bloomfield High School, and they're going to talk about AP seminar. Before they do, I know that Stacy reviewed the strategic plan at the very beginning of the evening tonight, and I'm really excited about the content that's in this presentation, namely because I think it does a great job of highlighting our vision of our students being communicators, contributors, critical thinkers, and collaborators, especially when it comes to communicating, thinking critically, and collaborating, and Nick and Megan will highlight on that tonight. I just wanted to lift that up. November 18th, we hope to recommend this course proposal to the Board of Education for approval. It's AP seminar for West Bloomfield High School. With that said, I'll stop talking and I'll let Nick and Megan start talking. You get to the floor.
Okay. So our course proposals for AP seminars, so it is a college board course. It's cross-curricular, so Nick is in the English department. I am in the science department currently, but I also have an English degree. So we're hoping to combine our cross-curricular knowledge to help students to explore the complexities of academic and real-world topics and issues by analyzing divergent perspectives. So,
Yeah, so the big reason for why we're pitching this course in the first place is that we currently have no honors or AP level courses in which students conduct their own research and present across multiple modalities consistently throughout. In many of our courses, we have like mini units that maybe place an emphasis on this, but in terms of AP Seminar, what is unique is that the class is centered around this idea of let's create a research question in response to stimuli texts that deal with social issues concerning the global community, the world around us, and everything like that. And it allows them to work on it in a consistent, recursive way throughout an extended period of time. For performance task 1, which is their original individual research-based essay, the current plan that we have for it is that is a 10-week research writing, revising, rewriting, re-researching, constant process over and over and over again for the individual paper that they end up submitting as part of that. It's the opportunity for students to collaborate, research, and present on topics they're passionate about. So they get the opportunity after reading all the stimuli text to find the one that resonates best with them. And they get to take that, make it their own, design this research question, and then seek answers to the research question throughout the class. They receive a constant stream of constructive criticism and engage in recursive learning, revising and editing that unified final product. They have the creative control over the research products as well. So as they go through, if they are reading a couple of stimulus texts that talk about environmental impact on the world, right? They can then create their own research question that concerns, they could look at West Bloomfield's environmental impact, they could look at Oakland County's, Michigan's, the United States of America's environmental impact and policy, things like that. And they could tackle it from different ways. They could look at it from a legal system, they could look at it from a scientific perspective, they could look at it in all these different perspectives as it appeals to them. And a huge push for this is that it's a skills-based approach. So content can radically change from year to year depending on the stimulus text provided, but as long as we're doing our jobs of working with this is how you vet sources, this is how you conduct academic research, and everything else like that, it does not matter what their content is. It's all about the application of the skills in the final products. And then it's the student-led research and collaborative environment, which builds the community that focuses on academic research and critical thinking to solve relevant problems, which is aligned very closely with our 4 Cs, but also what we talked about in the last meeting that we went to. Neither Megan nor I might be experts on law, but Alicia Chase definitely is in the high school. So it also opens up opportunities for our students to be able to make connections with teachers they may have never had, and they get to ask them questions that probe things like, hey, I'm looking into research about current events in this law, or I'm looking into environmental law. Maybe I can talk to Ms. Capello who teaches ACE, or maybe I can talk to Ms. Chase who might know something about the legal barriers or the legal systems that are set up around this. So for the data that supports the need for the course, I did a lot of surveys. And in a survey conducted on all students enrolled in the Honors American Literature sections of the 2023-2024 school year, over 90% of students' responses indicated that students were either highly interested or would commit to taking AP Seminar, were going to offer it. This indicates that at minimum 46 students are interested in taking the class, ready to offer it during their senior year. So these were students who I had at the end of last year, who I surveyed at the beginning of this year, and I said, if we had this class, would you be interested in taking it? Would this align with what you want to learn? And then of 30 students who responded to a preliminary survey, 28 said that they felt the skills taught in AP Seminar would enhance their writing products and prepare them for college writing or seminar style classes. And so for some additional data that kind of drove the motivation for why we're bringing this to you in the first place, during the 2023-2024 school year, WBSD had 100 students flat enrolled in AP Lang, which is our junior year AP English class. But if we look at who goes to continue on to our senior year AP English class, only 23 continued on. And there are myriad factors to this. Some of it's a scheduling issue, some of it is just personal interest. But the overwhelming reason that students gave when confronted in the hallways by me about it, is that they didn't see how it would benefit their collegiate or career goals. So they said, AP Lang, I saw it. I get my English 101 credit out of the way. I understand that. They were like, AP Lit, if I've already taken AP Lang, what does this give me that I haven't gotten already before? And if it's not really aligned to my interest, then I'm not inclined to go on and continue on with this track of advanced placement English. So we also then, just as a district-wide, we had 375 students take AP exams with a total of 741 tests taken, with 474 of those tests coming back with a score of a 3 or higher. It's clear we have a population of students that are hungry to be taking these advanced placement classes, that want to seek this college credit and want to get this type of learning experience. But like we said, we currently we have 2 English opportunities for them for AP, and that's it. So just by adding in this course, it's 50% added onto our course offerings, which might not sound like a lot, but it's another opportunity for them.
So as Scott mentioned, this class really aligns well with the 4 Cs that our district follows. Our students will be collaborating because their first performance task asks them that they have to work together in a group to come up with a research project and present that. So collaboration will be a major element that we're going to use throughout the class. Students will also work together often to accomplish that by like peer reviewing the work of others and learning from each other's writing and even the research that they do, they'll be able to share that with each other. They will also contribute to each other's individual projects. So the second performance task of the class that's required through the AP curriculum is that they have an individual project. And so they can share resources that they find with each other and again, provide feedback to each other. They will have to think critically throughout the entire year as they work through the social issues. They'll develop plans of action. They'll be reading others' work and reading the research and critically thinking and analyzing it. And then they will have to be in constant communication. They are going to be presenting to us and to their peers throughout the class.
Oh, am I taking this one? So,
I can do it.
no, I got you.
Okay.
So, the big thing for student outcomes and essential questions. So, by the end of the course, students will demonstrate the ability to form research question response stimuli, create cohesive evidence-based arguments for social change, and effectively argue a plan of action to address a social issue. So all of their performance tasks are rooted in this idea of what do I do with this information that I'm being given with, and how do I seek out more? And if we think about like the critical thinking aspect too, a lot of this is, okay, I've read this, how does this fit into the greater puzzle? How does this work out? Because they're going to be looking at really complex social issues. If there were things that had easy answers and easy solutions, they wouldn't exist still, right? So it's a super complex attempt at doing research and proposing solutions to that social issue. And then some of the essential questions that come up with their writing, with their multimodal presentations that they have to do. How do I compile my research into an organized, understandable document? How's an author making their argument? So when I read an outside source, what argument are they making and how are they doing it? Do I agree with the author's argument or are there parts that don't convince me? So we read through, even if it's a peer-reviewed source and we think it's really, really good, we can point out, but there's this part that I think is a shortcoming in the research. And maybe I need to find another source that further buffs up or compensates for this weakness. We can also see solutions to problems that are viable, which ones are short-term or long-term solutions, and how effective will these be towards solving a bigger issue. So when I propose solutions to this social issue that's coming up, is this a Band-Aid issue that's only going to work for a couple years? Or are we trying to create something that's more sustainable? And is this a social issue that could exist in 10, 20, 30 years in the first place is another question. How can I combine ideas from different sources into something unique and cohesive? So how do I synthesize information? What makes a presentation ineffective versus effective? So how do I get up and make this make sense to you? How do I boil down 8 to 9 pages of research into a 10-minute presentation that's engaging and interesting and keeps the attention of my audience? And how can I be an effective communicator of big ideas across multiple mediums and modalities? So not only how do I become a better writer or how do I become a better presenter, it's how do I become better at both? How do I make this work regardless of how I represent my data and present it to others? And then for the pacing overview, just a brief overview. For quarter one, we talked about focusing mainly on performance task 3 because that's what the AP exam actually is when they sit down. It's an hour-and-a-half exam, I think it's like an hour and 48 minutes grand total. And so that's an impromptu data-based argumentative essay and 3 short answer responses. And we would also then start talking about research methods and strategies. So how do we differentiate between a good source and a bad source? What's the difference between a peer-reviewed source and a journal source? Is there a difference between those things, and in what scenarios do they exist? Quarter 2 then builds into the research methods and strategies, designing a research question, and then doing the group research-based essay with the group multimedia presentation. So once we all conduct our own individual research, how do those pieces fit together? How do we take all these ideas, put it into one cohesive presentation, and how do we deliver it so everyone is meaningfully represented? Then with quarter 3, that's where the individual argumentative research essay comes in. So this is where they kind of break it down to, this is the causes of this social issue, these are the impacts of this social issue, ranging from potentially local to all the way global. And then these are possible solutions that people are suggesting, ways we can try and take action to solve it. And then there's the individual multimedia research presentation where they have a defense. So if anyone here has ever done a traditional master's defense where you get up and then the people who are judging you ask you questions and they say, hey, I really liked what was on slide 4. If you go back though, I'd like to ask you a question about this graph you chose to include. That's what we do for the individual one. And then for quarter 4, it's the submission of performance tasks 1 and 2. So one thing we didn't really talk about is that the AP exam is also, performance task 3 is the only part that they do impromptu. The group-based research essay, as well as the individual research essay, they submit a final product once the teacher has designated like the final deadline for that. So what that means is that we get time throughout the entire semester, throughout the entire school year, where we get to say, hey, this paper looks really good, it's at a B right now, here's how we take it to an A. You have a week to take it to the A. Now we're at an A, how do we take it to the A+? Or if we're looking at it in AP terms, this is a 6 out of 8 on the scale, or a 6 out of 9. How do we get it to a 7? Okay, now we're at the 7, how do we get it to the 8? And at the end, all of their papers that they worked on with us throughout the entire year, we submit on their behalf. So the AP doesn't see where they start, it only sees where they end, which I think is kind of a really cool thing that other APs don't necessarily offer. It's not final product based and like the culmination of your efforts. It is like, or like it is for this one. In other AP cases, it's just content knowledge and can I produce it. This is what have I worked on and what do I have to show for all my learning. And so once we submit those and we do final preparation for the last AP exam, the last part that we've talked about briefly is after AP exams, what we do with this like next month of school we have. And so we talked about doing a community engagement project. So taking everything they've done, either in their group research essays or their individual ones, and then designing a project and hopefully going to elementary and middle schools, maybe teaching lessons on it, or finding ways to incorporate it into them. So that way we have some trickle down of juniors and seniors at the high school who've been doing really cool work addressing these social issues, bringing it down to the lower schools, the elementary and middle schools, and showing off what they've been learning in a way that's digestible for younger students too, and getting them excited to do this type of stuff when they get to school. That other slide is just materials, in case anyone wants to ask what does our year at a glance or anything look like.
That's fantastic. Do board members have any questions? Ms. Davis?
Yes, will you incorporate the use of AI? Because that's what they're gonna be really doing when they go out and do the workforce. I know, I teach up at Michigan State and I traditionally had said, don't use it. Now, the reality is they need to learn how to use it and how to use the prompts.
It's kind of like, we gotta get with it before it gets away from us.
In academia, we do. The fact is these students are gonna need those skills as part of their soft skill set.
Yeah, one thing we talked about when we when I presented this to Curriculum Council was using AI to narrow research. And so looking at this and talking about if we're using, my classes right now in American Dream are talking about like, listen, your phone's in your hand, right? So let's talk about ways that we can use this. So should we have ChatGPT write our papers for us? Probably not, because College Board is gonna flag that and they're gonna find it immediately. But we can talk about, hey, I have 8 out of my 10 sources for this annotated bibliography. I love all of them, but I can't seem to find 2 more that work. All right, let's find an AI generator and say, I love this article for what this does. Here's the link to it. Can you find me similar articles, right? So using it as a way to not shortcut the process, but yeah, using it as a tool to enhance the process to make it so that way, instead of combing through page after page after page of like, you know,
Because
Google.
that's the reality of the
Yeah.
world.
Instead of doing that or going through like our search engines, like how we have EBSCO host and everything that we have. I know when I was in my master's, I was on like page 16 before I found something I needed and I was reading every abstract, praying that this one would give me what I needed, right? We can utilize this as a tool to at least say, hey, I'm not taking away the rigor of this assignment, but I am gonna take away 2 hours of you searching needlessly for
Yes.
something.
Perfect.
You
Yeah,
know?
so they still get the basics,
Mhm.
but they get this additional tool that they also have to learn how to use.
Yeah, and if they can use it effectively, then that means that they can speed up the research process and it doesn't impact the final product, right?
Right.
It just
Those are
means that we
Demonstration of their capabilities, which is
Yeah.
what you're looking for.
we spend less time on the menial tasks and more time on what actually matters.
Perfect, thank you. Good answer.
So I sent an email to Danya over the weekend, you knew this was coming. So I'm constantly, you teachers haven't heard me before, I keep saying, but what about the other kids, the non-AP kids? And there was just an article about a week ago in MLive that I hope you shared. And there's a quote in it and because I think this is a missed opportunity, I support this course 100%. And I don't support very many APs, but I do support this, and I'm gonna tell you why. I want to read this quote from that article. This principal says, by having all students take an AP class early in their high school career, they become more confident in their ability to succeed in a rigorous class. Kids who didn't see themselves as AP students before start to consider taking other challenging classes after taking AP seminar, the principal said. My concern is this. Your proposal says we want to offer this to juniors and seniors. This school on the west side of the state, they put 10th graders in it. And I think that when I look at the essential questions, when I look at the community engagement project that comes in the fourth quarter of this, to me, those are great foundational skills that will help them succeed later in their high school career. And I feel like this is flipped the wrong way. To me, being able to do some of those community engagement projects helps them with their NHS. It helps them build that college application portfolio of experience that they need. It helps them build those writing skills. So while I'll support this class, I really want you to look at giving it to kids younger, not on the way out the door, coming in the door.
It's great feedback, Carol, and the timing is so crazy. So obviously, like, different schools have adopted this course at different times, and
Right.
I'm really excited that Nick and Megan raised their hand and said, hey, let's get this in here. We read the same article, like, right after they presented, and we already talked about, like, how can we look at steps to start to implement that as well. I think it starts with them being trained, them getting a good handle on the course, and then us looking like, what does it look like to have this at 10th grade? Where you take your standards that are required at 10th grade and blend this course with it, which is exactly what that high school is doing, and that's on our radar.
Right, and I guess the concern that I have is if we could give this tool to the kids earlier, that ability, that critical reading, that, those writing skills, if we could give this to them earlier, would we see more success on those AP tests? Because you're at what, about 65% success rate on AP tests? I think I would love to see us at 90%.
Yeah,
Right, we all would, and I know there are parents that are paying for it would love that too. But again, it's that skill set that we want to give them, that critical thinking part of it that they need earlier, not later.
Yeah, it's good feedback, thank you.
Thank you. I asked all mine in curriculum council, so.
Well, Nick and Megan, we really
Great.
appreciate your time tonight, but more importantly, all the time that you've spent leading up to tonight, from presenting at Curriculum Council, to doing the research, to raising your hand and saying, hey, we want to get after this, so thank you so much for your time.
Also too, on the slideshow, I'm sure you shared it with
Yep.
all of them. We have the year at a glance document, the AP guidelines and everything else listed there if anyone's interested in looking at those too.
We have all access to all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, this will be coming to the board at the next board meeting. Item number 4 on our budget is our budget to actual, October 2024. Nancy Hoover, Executive Director of Financial Services, will address the board. Don't go too far, Scott, you're up next.
I'm up next, I got the end seat here strategically.
Smart call.
Scott, could you say the names?
Nick Kissy. I'll write it down for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just like to write names.
He's an English teacher at the high school. And then Megan Hurts.
Good evening. This is the budget to actual for October 24. As you can see, so some of the areas that I've highlighted this month, local revenue, again, local revenue is made up mostly of property taxes, and that really varies just when we get that in, based on when we get the payments from the local taxing authorities. So last year at this point, we had collected a little bit more than we have now, but we don't see any issues. I mean, it will, continue to trickle in. Federal revenue, last year there were 2 grants that had closed out, and we had requested the final amounts for those 2 grants. They were a little bit larger. So that's why we're showing this year that we have 99% left of federal revenue, and last year we only had 86% at this point in time. Down in business services, this was the same thing as last, we have a contracted service, individual who's paid through contracted services. Last year, the payment was not made until later in the second quarter, and this year we made that first payment in the first quarter. So that's why we have a difference there a little bit. And then transportation, we had, so depending on when our tanks are empty, we had a diesel fuel delivery that was in early October in '23, and we had made the payment for that. The delivery in October was received later in the month this year, so we have not yet paid for that diesel fuel that came in. So that, and those are very large payments. We get quite a few gallons. So those are, otherwise in total you can see this year we, at this point we have about 78% of our budget left. Last year we were at 77%, so we are on track as compared to last year.
Any questions?
I have a question. In regards to the original budget, so the actual revenue and expenses for the close as of October 31st?
Mhm.
So is there any way when we look at the budget, that the budget can also be segmented within months, so we can compare the budget and the actuals and look at the variance that way? As we look at the original budget now, that's the total budget, and you're comparing it and saying what's left. But if we look at it from a month-to-month perspective, can we look at it from budget to actuals?
So typically in schools, that's not, you don't look at it as a month-to-month basis. Basically, our revenue comes in very large chunks.
Correct.
So we get the taxes, August, September, here it is. And then our expenditures aren't equal as it goes. So that, typically in schools, that's not how we look at it. So we look at it as a percentage of where we're at on a yearly basis.
But we do know what we're gonna get on an actual basis, because again, trying to avoid when it comes to budgeting, as we look at actuals, we are aware what we should be having or budget for a monthly basis, or else we're just guessing on the original budget.
We know what we're to get in total taxes, we know which months we typically get those in.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that that would be a great education for, certainly for the board as well as the community to understand it as well. Or else we're always in the, oops, here it is category, because if you know, then it would be great for us to know too, because you definitely have a track of when certain things are coming as far as revenue as well as expenses.
Well, I think that is what we're presenting here, because we're comparing this to last year, so that you can see, when you look at local revenue, you can see that, and the explanation that I gave, why we're different, you can see that at this point, local revenue, we should have received the majority of it. And so that's what we're comparing it to, as well as state revenue. You can see we don't start getting state revenue until October.
Right.
And that comes all the way through July, actually August of next year for this year. So when you're looking at the percentages, even though it's shown on an annual basis, I think this is a very good way to present it, because you're seeing where you should be at, and it's very consistent from year to year.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just don't necessarily disagree, because it seems like where we're at the end of the year, we were at a deficit. So it has to be somewhere, or how we can look at it a little differently, so we can portray and understand when do we have certain levers, will we kick back, or we increase, or, kind of how do we manage? Because if we do the same thing we did last year, we might end up in the same position. So just trying to understand how we can do and what we can do to show and again, educate the board where we are.
Thank you for the.
So the budget has roughly a $2.8 million deficit, spending more than you're taking in.
Yes, as of the original budget, yes, it is.
Have there been interventions that will change that? Because, I mean, we're sort of treading along here and at the same pace we did last year, and have there been interventions that are starting to close that gap?
So again, this was based on the original assumptions that we made.
I understand.
We made a presentation earlier, I don't exactly remember which month. We made a presentation showing that based on what our original budget was versus what then came through with the governor's budget and the differences that we were going to then show in the First Amendment. So we've presented that to the board. So that is, part of our intervention. We know that we will be getting additional revenue, which will help to reduce the original deficit. And then as we're working through the budget, and again, this is part of our budget strategy, is that any positions that become vacant, we're looking at them critically. And if, we feel that we can eliminate a position, then we do, when it becomes vacant. So those are things that as we're moving through the First Amendment, yes.
Just that presentation you did close the gap by about 800,000, as I recall. So we ended up at about a $2 million deficit.
Correct.
I believe we're getting some more money coming from mental health and safety, $460,000.
Yes, we did get
But we
additional
won't see
money.
that till sometime late in the spring.
Correct,
So we're still over about $1.5 million deficit.
correct.
Have there been other interventions between when this budget was adopted and now at the district level to help close that?
Yeah, it's through an attrition model. It's still a very conservative budget. Again, we started on paper with an original budget. Through attrition, we made changes. We are not at a point with, again, will be presented at the November 18th meeting, with the 17.59% fund balance, which is, in excess of our board policy. We take it through an attrition model. We know that we'll know by December who's planning to retire, because there's an early retirement window to let us know. And then like we did last year, through attrition, we'll look at those things. But where we're at with the budget now, and based on some of the assumptions that have changed, when we present an amended budget, obviously we think that will be better than the 2.8 million that we originally presented, but also that sometimes there's spending that just doesn't occur, that you plan for and doesn't occur. So prior to, cutting programming and things like this, we want to go through the Second Amendment. We want to see or the First Amendment, in January, February timeframe when we bring that to the board. We'll take a look at that, and then we'll look at our staffing models and see, are we able to make those changes? So we did all of that last year through attrition, and again, because these are people's jobs, we want to make sure. We did, if you remember, change the mental health position. We were going to cut that position because the grant was cut, right? One of them at the middle school. We were able to bring that back 0.7. We've been working, our team has been working very hard to find grants to support that position. So we're this close. There's another grant that we're going to be seeking to make that position whole. So we don't want to be reactionary. We want to just make sure that we're doing these things along, the way. So I'm pretty, I feel comfortable where we're at, and knowing that we have a lot of staff that's approaching their retirement, that we'll be able to continue to do that through attrition at this point. We don't want to cut programming at this point. It's not necessary because the board has, they have secured us a rainy day fund for that reason, to get us through certain cycles that are normal to experience through a school this year.
It is. Okay, thank you very much for that. Item number 5 on our agenda is our district goals for 24-25. Mr. Scott Ronald, once again, present to the board. I also made you guys a copy so that you could have it in your board folder of those district goals, so. thank you. For reference.
Good evening, I'm back. So you have the paper in front of you that has the district data goals and our priority objectives and our goal statements. And my goal here is to talk a little bit about our process and how we land on these priority objectives and goal areas, and then just open it up for discussion. So as you all know, in the spring of '22, we completed with the guidance of MASD our strategic planning for 5 years. And during that time, we were able to collectively really set some targeted goals in 5 different goal areas: academics, culture, personnel, community and communications, and then operations and finances. And that really, for us, set the stage perfectly for our on-site accreditation review, which took place the following year with Cognia, formerly known as Advanced Ed. So in 22-23, Cognia facilitated a very thorough accreditation review on-site with us. And really the purpose of that accreditation review was to examine the quality of our continuous improvement process. What's great about Cognia is they're aligned with MyKIP, which is the district and school improvement platform that we enter all that information in. What else is great is they assign an individual coach and review team to each district and building. They give feedback, they give coaching, and they give guidance. And during that time, they worked with us to explore how we analyze our stakeholder feedback, which are our community, staff, and student surveys that we give annually. They looked at how we analyze student achievement data, and they also looked at how we use learning environment observation data, which is basically a tool that we use when we go into classrooms to measure specific elements of good instruction. They also spent time looking at how we create meaningful theories of action, which are our priority objectives in our strategic plan, based on those 3 key data points. What was great about that is at the end of that process, they gave us a score in all of these different areas. They give us our score as a district, and they also match that against their average score within the Cognia network. It was really exciting for us because stakeholder feedback and how we analyze it, we get a score of a 4.0, which is the highest that you can get. The Cognia network average is 3.1. When it came to student performance achievement and analysis, they gave us a score of 4.0 as well. Again, the Cognia average there was a 3.1. And then when it came to learning environment observation analysis, they gave us a score of 4, and the Cognia network average is a 3.0. They commended us on our data-driven approach, and since then, we've continued to lean on their coaching to refine and revise and improve how we establish goals. And essentially, we have a 5-step process. So we, on a quarterly basis, analyze the learning environment observation data that we collect within the classrooms. We share that at the building leadership level and at the PLC level. And then in the fall, winter, and spring, we analyze our NWA MAP growth and achievement at the district, building, and PLC level. Annually in the spring, we analyze our stakeholder feedback. We take all those 3 global district data points, we work with building leadership teams, and we start to narrow down what we think our priority objectives should be in each of those goal areas, namely academics and culture and learning environment. And then after that, we identify strategies that fall underneath those priority objectives, which is what you've seen when you come to board walkthroughs, which is what you see when we present our data, and that's kind of where we landed with that. So that's the overview of the what and the how of how we landed with those, and I can open the floor for discussion.
Everybody's seen these at every presentation, like at the beginning of every presentation. And every school that does the presentations begins with them as well. So it's embedded into everything that is being presented. So does anyone have any questions on the data goals themselves or how they were developed?
And on those, I just have other comments, but they're more for John.
I do, Stacy.
Go ahead.
In regards to the district data goals, we're talking about like for science. I just want to make sure I'm on the right page when I ask the questions. So for instance, I'll use science as an example. 5th, 8th, and 11th in STEP. The percent of students that are proficient will be at least 10% above the state average. That's the goal. That's the goal?
That's a district data goal, yes.
Okay, so I do have a question in regards to that. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page. So when we look at this goal for West Bloomfield School District, because we are West Bloomfield and the state is the state. Again, I think I've asked for this in different meetings, for us to compare ourselves with our peer districts and not necessarily the state average. and looking at our neighboring districts, which are different. And then looking at the whole harmless districts as well, because there's about, 31 school districts in our entire state that have the privilege of whole harmless, and we happen to be one of them, which gives us more revenue per pupil. So when we compare ourselves to the state average, we're comparing ourselves to Cass County and Benzie County, and those are some of the, counties that don't enjoy the per capita that we do, or the state per pupil rate. So when we compare ourselves, it seems as though we will compare ourselves, if we're having a true measurement, of those school districts that have whole harmless, that are like us, and enjoy some additional revenue per pupil, and our peer districts, so we can look at demographics. Or else we're just comparing ourselves to, I can compare myself to Simone Biles, but I'm never gonna win. It's
Never say never.
Well, I'm gonna
Never.
say that at this point. But again, for us to compare ourselves with the state and say we're gonna go 10% above, when we have peer districts that are outperforming us at this point, what's our measuring stick? Because again, we have other districts that are whole harmless. They're outperforming us as well. So where do we set our bar so we can be competitive with those that look like us, demographically and resource rich? So the 10% state average for each one of those, in my opinion, that's not us stretching to meet a goal. Because again, the state average includes everyone in the state, but not necessarily those that live around us.
I just want to make a reference, just because we were talking about whole harmless, there's many ways that districts can get one, their title money, their at-risk money, all of those things. So to say that things are equal ever is not, just because we get, $668 or whatever.
Right, I mean, if you look at like other districts, which
There's a lot of streams.
I refrain from mentioning other districts at our board meeting out of respect, but basically there are districts who are ranging $14,000 per pupil. There are some that are ranging $12,000 per pupil. Ours is actually one of the lower ones on the end. I think the goal by definition, especially with the state, with Cognia coming in, that's an independent auditor coming in to take a look at your teaching and learning. It certainly is a stretch goal. Again, we're comparing ourselves to ourselves because we want to demonstrate growth and proficiency amongst our students. This is where we're at today, and we have to decide how are we going to grow, and focusing our efforts internally on our students is what Scott and his team have been doing.
Deborah, you mentioned comparing ourselves with like demographics and our neighbors.
I didn't. I said peer districts, then our neighbors, and they're different.
Yes.
So we have peer districts.
Well, you mentioned demographics.
Peer districts do that.
Right, what district in our area has a similar demographics that we have?
We can go to school data. Scott can certainly pull that for us, so Donnie can mention what those districts are. But we are a district, and we are compared with peers, and we do have neighboring districts.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out what the definition of peer is. Just because they're geographically close to us, or is it because they're
It'd be like similar socioeconomic
Right.
status, similar demographics in terms of special ed population,
And funding?
student count, funding. I mean, there's a number of.
Yeah.
It used to be that Anchor Bay was another
Yeah,
one,
and
but I don't
it's
think
like
it
I
is
said,
anymore.
we can certainly pull it. It's not like it's not in school data, so that information can be known, we can pull it and look at it. But those are our peer districts, and then we have those districts that are our neighboring districts, and those are different. But if we compare ourselves to our peer districts, then we can understand how well we are comparing to those districts. I will go back to the fact that, again, we have neighbors that live right across the street in West Bloomfield. Some children go to Ball Lake, some children go to Bloomfield Hills. Again, I don't want to put our kids up to that lemonade sale because our kids won't know how to make change. And that is a concern because, again, of the proficiency, those would be our neighboring districts. So when we look at the data, state average is not cutting us for West Bloomfield because we have different demographics that we have within the state that we can compare ourselves to. I think it's a very low bar.
I understand what you're saying. Is this an attainable goal or is it a reach goal?
I think it's, in certain grade levels attainable, and in certain grade levels a little bit of a stretch goal, right? So I think it depends on the grade level that you look at.
Carol, you had something?
So I'm not sure like where this fits in, so I'm gonna kind of look at both of you, because one of the issues that isn't talked about in this document is attendance and the tardiness and the kids that are being taken out of a class period. I mean, there's apparently a pass system where kids can get a pass to get out of a class at the high school, and the teacher's name that's on it doesn't even have to approve it. And there's all kinds of things that if a kid's not in the class, they're not gonna achieve some of this stuff.
For advisory.
And so it's,
Just so you know, that's an advisory fund.
I've heard it's for other things.
But I mean, if you need an extra help, you can go.
Yeah, but again,
It's not a regular fund, I mean, it's the advisory fund.
But again, attendance needs to be a priority objective here. And attendance in the broad scope of whether they show up late, whether they're leaving early, whether they're, missing class periods, or they're just not here. Whatever that is, and I would love to see some SMART goals around attendance in each one of those little subcategories, because you're not gonna continue to reach goals if you don't do that, in my opinion. I don't see it happening. Because if they're not here, I mean, we took care of the feeding them, now that they're not hungry, we don't have hungry kids, because they get meals, so now let's make sure that they're actually here in their classes. And so that, I think, is a huge gaping hole here. One thing under the culture and learning environment, the last bullet is about family communication, where it says we will provide ongoing consistent communication and engagement with all families about student progress so that each student demonstrates personal and academic growth. That's great, but I think there's a whole nother aspect to communication that is being missed here. And that is asking parents, how do we best communicate with you? Is it via text message? Is it via phone message? Is it, and it could be different depending on if it's just, a weekly progress report on the kid versus we have an urgent situation and this building is in lockdown. How are we gonna communicate that to parents so that, they're not being panicked? And I think that taking that family communication to that next level, I think that's another important goal that really needs to be addressed. And they should have a deadline to start doing some of these things. They need to be SMART goals that are measurable and that have some deadlines. My last comments have to do with, and I'm going to address these ones to you, Danya, because again, there were other SMART goals that I thought, this is great for student data, okay? But there's a whole lot more to this district than that. There's the facilities themselves, and we're now in the third year of our strategic plan, and I still don't have a good handle on the bond and sinking fund projects. I don't know, I have never seen a 5-year, let alone a 10-year long-range facilities plan that the strategic plan called for. And I think that needs to be done. We're in year 3. We need to be able to see it. The community ought to be able to go to the website, and I did spend time there over the weekend, and see a timeline that says, from 2024 to 2026, we're gonna be working on SHICO, and then, when, it should be easy to see, easy to follow. And it doesn't exist. And I think that these things really need to be addressed in a SMART fashion, so that it improves transparency, it improves understanding at the board table, as well as in the community. So I think those are really important things that we need to address. Another thing that's not addressed as a priority objective is getting budget accuracy down. We had Kyle and Ed, okay, he was a superhero, he could get the end of the year budget to within 1% of budget to actual. And we need to get there. We need to start getting there to those things, and we need to, the board needs to know a list of interventions that you will use to achieve when there's a budget gap. All these different SMART goals need to be part of these priority objectives, because all of that affects this. We can't get here if we don't have a handle on what's going on with our facilities and what's going on with the money. So it's that trickle down effect that's got to be done in a, very detailed fashion. So that's what I have.
Just wanted to just add one more thing too, since my fellow board member went to objectives, I was with the data first. But and I'm gonna go here, in the priority objectives, and we talk about, the model which we have in regards to the attrition model. So that's really more of a human resource kind of model of human capital and where they belong and what we have. That should be something that we can understand, not necessarily where we're cutting programs. How do we actually plan to do that? And how does that human capital model work right into, again, all of these goals? Because it takes people to make everything work. So we need to understand, again, how those people, because some people will leave because of attrition, but if we really plan on trying to strengthen to at least 10% above, certainly hope more than the state average, we might need different resource individuals to do that. So as some leave, we may need some specialists to come in unless there's another way in which we're going to utilize staff. But we should know that. So again, it gets down into, I think, Carol mentioned SMART goals, and there's another, set of goals that we can use, some objectives and key deliverables. We need to know what those are as well, so we can understand when we sit down, what are we marching for, and feel good about it.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Our sixth on our agenda, we're good for the order. We do have a few things, but does anyone have anything for you? Okay, one, there's gonna be an open seat on the policy committee for January. So if any board member, tomorrow, but if any board member wants to fill in for Carol's seat, in January before the next organizational meeting, but hopefully has some, desire to sit on the policy committee going forward, if you could please reach out to me and we can talk about it or anything like that, because Deborah and I have to plan on a January date. And then, MASB priority setting meeting at Open Schools is November 14th. If you can attend and you haven't signed up, please do so today or have Liz do it for you. It's important that they hear from districts so that they know how to get something up, so everybody, when they do a survey, everything's encapsulated to be able to take some action. On November 18th at noon, MASB is doing a government relations, conducting a news from the Capitol lame duck edition. You should have got a link today. I highly suggest everybody try to tune into that, because I think lame duck might be a little crazy this year again. And then fourth thing is anyone that's interested in government relations with open OCSBA, is it Open Schools or combined?
Yes,
Or it's just OCSBA, with OCSBA, which is Wednesdays once a month?
It's once a month, it's usually, but not always, the first Wednesday of the month, if it's, and it's at 6:30. It's in person most months. In February, I think February we're gonna do virtual because of winter. And that one will have to move because of the NSBA, so you have to watch the calendar for those. And we don't meet in December, July, or August. So there's only 9 meetings a year.
Okay. So just think about that, and please either talk to me or Carol about that. Anybody else? No?
I have one more thing.
Yeah.
I have one thing.
Oh,
So the upcoming dinner meeting is November, I gotta get these straight, November 20th. November 20th, December 18th, got it. November 20th, the cutoff is coming up to register, so if you wanna come, that is our 4th annual joint meeting with the Superintendent's Association. And this actually ties into part of the earlier discussion today. The topic is artificial intelligence, and we've got a guru coming in that, to come and talk about AI and getting us all on the same page, understanding it and how it could be used in the classroom. So if you want to join, please do, but register before the deadline, because even after the deadline, I can't get you in.
No, it's not televised, but we should make a plug for trivia night. Well, I got a question. Okay, November 8th, Friday is trivia night. It's a great function. It's at 5 o'clock. I think I got 5 o'clock.
I think it's 6.
Why did I put, oh.
Show up early.
Maybe it's
It's okay. I'll just
But you guys should, and it always really sells out. It's really crowded.
Yeah, there are some seats open, I saw them.
My table always has a lock on last place to the order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not your paying for.
Which one has me
No, no, because I won't be there.
Anybody else?
Just a comment, as you'll see in this envelope here, Youth Assistance has their annual meeting and sponsor appreciation breakfast. It's December 6th, put my glasses on here, it's gonna be over in Little Hill Hills. It's a breakfast meeting, so registration's at 7, breakfast, the meeting starts at 7:30. I will be there, representing this ward, but if anyone else wants to go, I will have the information in the envelope there, so.
Anybody else? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just still waiting.
That's okay, it's just for the policy committee, Deborah, Stacy and I have already, Wayne from Neola gave us some dates. So the dates that work for the three of us are 1/8 from 12 to 2:30, or 1/21 from 12 to 2:30, or 1/22 from 12 to 2:30. So if you're gonna volunteer, please make sure one of those dates work, because then I have to get new dates. So we have 3 at least, so.
Which were hard to get.
Which were hard to get, so if whoever's gonna step in, just know that's our first session.
I'm happy to step in if nobody else wants to, but if somebody has a burning desire.
Yeah, they don't run to do
I was
policy.
just saying, they can say it
Run
if
for that
they,
one.
if they've got their own.
Usually away from it, I know. Yeah, they usually run away, just saying.
But I can just check that.
Thank you for that. Okay, so agenda item number 7 is a closed session pursuit evaluation check-in, and then a motion.
I move to convene into closed session for the purpose of a superintendent evaluation under Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 8(1).
Can I ask a clarifying question before we vote?
Yeah.
This is only for evaluation purposes,
Yeah.
there will be no discussion of goals, is that correct?
That's just for evaluation
Okay.
check-in.
Just
A
double check.
motion to convene into closed session for the purpose of the superintendent evaluation, it's moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Deborah? Roll call.
Oh, yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Nick?
That's funny.
Julie?
Aye.
Ashley?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Stacy, yes. Motion passes 7-0. So what time is it?
7:39.